Hi, and welcome to another episode of Hot Takes with me, the Silver Fox. This is a follow-up to the video from first thing this morning, where we looked at the second email that Roger Livermore sent to Humza Yousaf with regards to the legal position of Dorothy Bain and indeed the entire Scottish Government. And if you've watched that video, you'll find it astonishing, I'm sure. So don't come and watch this one until you go back and watch that one in full. It's 19 and a half minutes long. It's longer than I normally do, but it did take time to do because you have to go through the whole of that email. And it is worth sitting through because of what it contains. But what we have here is a Zoom call I've done with Roger with regards to that second email. And touching on other subjects as well, but you know that's the main focus. It's on that second email, and again, there's some astonishing stuff in this. So let me first of all say thank you very much for Roger for coming on, giving up his time, spending his time with us, and helping to elucidate everybody as to what's happening. And I will say it's very important that everybody knows, because the more people that know, the fewer hiding places there are. We can hold these politicians to account. We cannot let them get away with what they're getting away with. Let's go and watch this Zoom video and see really where Roger is going with it, because it is astonishing. Here goes. Right, so hi. What I've got here is I'm now speaking with Roger. Obviously, I've done the introduction at the head of the video, but I'm now here with Roger. He is the guy that has held us all enthralled over a series of a couple of these big emails that have proved to be incredibly popular, and people are very, very interested, much to the annoyance of some, I suspect, but certainly to the great delight of many, as it gives us a chance for the truth to come out. But I'd like to make sure that we all know that Roger knows whereof he's speaking. So I'm going to ask now Roger to introduce himself and to tell us why he is so authoritative on what he is saying. So, Roger, over to you, please.
Fine, thanks very much. Yeah, I'm a former government scientist, qualified at senior level, but I then transferred into being an HM inspector of health and safety, but I actually covered the whole range of UK sectors. So I do nuclear, I do major hazards, chemical hazards, things like that. But for 10 years, I was a lead regulator of Network Rail, working at board level. And during that period, the sector actually solved safety. It stopped having it stopped having passenger fatalities. But I also, my most probably important work was developing patient safety and infection control and the regulation of it in healthcare and social care. So I had that background. Part of my job was also being a Crown prosecutor when there were cases which need to be prosecuted on, take them in the lower courts and prepare them for the higher courts, for the Crown courts. When I retired after 10 years as the lead regulator of Network Rail, I took up doing patient safety, and I'm the co-lead of the group Action for a Safe and Accountable People's NHS. So that's where we are, and that's been the work really for the last 12 years. And a lot of the issues we may touch on today, that they've been going for quite a number of years and are well documented.
Right, yeah, because it was through the patient advocacy and things, which is how we've basically met, because we're both related and worked with a dear friend of the channel, Leslie Roberts. So
Yes.
that's how the coming together of this has happened, which is wonderful, because obviously the remarkable work Leslie's done. I think we praise her all the time, much to I think to her embarrassment, if the truth be known. But we feel we can't praise her enough because of what she's highlighting. Now, getting into these emails. Now, we did the first one, did the video of that on Friday, but that was the one you sent on the 4th of February.
Yes.
And that one seemed to be very much centric towards, should we say, looking to get rid of Bain. Basically, you were after Bain's job because of what she was doing on that one, wasn't it?
It is. I mean, the Lord Advocate is the weak point in the system of both government and justice. They have a dual role, which is legally incompatible. And we've logged 15 major offences by Bain, and they've been with First Minister Sturgeon and then with First Minister Humza Yousaf, and nothing has been done on it. But with the post office prosecutions, we got a simpler case which we could actually pursue.
Yeah, and of course they'd be complicit if they're knowing what is going on, wouldn't they? So it's it's not just Bain doing it. There's the guilty after the fact element, and the complicity certainly. And the covering up of what was going on as well. But we note from the second one though, you've widened the chase, and you're going after Humza Yousaf more, I think, than Bain. Although obviously you want both of them gone. But I did also notice, and I've got to be honest, there was a part in there when I was doing my video about it, where you're saying not only must she go now, but you want her prosecuted, and that's a step up, which is I think that would please a lot of people. But it is, I mean, I'm going to put this. I think it was the imposition of having the judiciary subsumed into the executive, which I think is truly frightening.
Yes, it is.
You're losing all that independence, and that, well, in Scotland's case, it's not ever had the independence, but it should obviously be independent, shouldn't it?
Yeah, certainly. I mean, it was the loss of the separation of the powers which came with the Devolution Act, the Scotland Act, 1998. There are major problems with that. I mean, it's actually fatal, the errors within it, because what it did was it meant that the government was unconstrained by the law. The government here in Scotland decides who gets prosecuted and who does not get prosecuted. And of course, it cannot prosecute itself. So the government is outside the law. It can act with impunity.
Yeah, I mean, especially just not related to this, but a separate thing, is they're looking now to remove juries as well. And juries would be the last checkpoint between the state arresting you, the state prosecuting you, and the state imprisoning you. And there would be no outside independent check on any of that.
That's right. I mean,
that's frightening, you know.
I mean, quite seriously, we did a comparison of the Scottish justice system with that in Germany during the 1930s, and we found 20 major similarities, and not in a good way. It was that bad.
No. Oh, no, I mean, we're on the channel, we've been saying for a long time, it's very much like that. They're very much very National Socialist in their outlook, but then one only has to look at the formation of the SNP to realise that's not a surprise. But let's get into a few Q&As here. Let's just sort of spread things out for people who are watching. Now, I've got some questions up. So what is wrong, particularly with the post office convictions? And what does that tell us about the system of justice and of government in Scotland?
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of controversy over the post office prosecutions and convictions in the rest of the UK. But in principle, the prosecutions were actually lawful. They were probably wrongly taken, but they were lawful. But in Scotland, they were completely unlawful because it was the Scottish government via its government department, its government prosecutor, the Crown Office and Procurator Fiscal, that were taking the prosecutions. So they were never lawful. There is a whole raft of legislation and law which says that governments cannot be the prosecutor. So this is European
Convention on Human Rights, isn't it?
It is, but it's illegal under both the European Convention on Human Rights, which is international law. It's illegal under UK law, and it's even unlawful under Scots law. So there's that range of legislation which says no, the government cannot be running or interfering with judicial processes.
Right, yeah. And so the lie that Bain was telling then about her claiming that it was independent, that is just clearly straight off a lie, isn't it? And of course you've got Yousaf backing her as well.
Yeah, she knew damn well what she was doing. And they have known it arguably since the start of devolution, because we've got the senior judges of the Court of Session actually making a representation to what's called the Calman Commission in 2009. That looked at how's the Scotland Act been working, and the senior judges said, well, it's clearly not right to have the government minister, the government principal legal advisor, also being the prosecutor.
The chief prosecutor, yeah.
You know, they said it was wrong, and recent years, there's been surveys of the legal profession in Scotland, and they've said it's not right,
Mhm.
but just nothing has happened on that.
And at the moment, is the government responsible for the, how can I put this, the creation, imposition, or giving judges their jobs? Is that something that the
Yeah,
government has control over?
yeah, exactly. I mean, that is part. I mean, it's fundamental in statutory law, part of it constitutional law, but obviously the judiciary has to be independent. And I mean, that's part of the problem with Bain and Youssef here. They are interfering with the judiciary. But it's the judiciary here, they're dependent on, first of all, their cases. The government decides what prosecutions they get. It also, tellingly, decides what cases it will not get.
Mm-hmm.
And similar with investigation of deaths, the government controls that. The Bain controls that under Youssef. So the system of deaths is covered. They block private prosecutions. Other problems are that it's government that controls police
Sorry.
investigations.
You say they block? This is just they block private prosecutions.
Yeah,
against the government.
they block any. The Lord Advocate. I mean, in England, it's very much encouraged. The system encourages private prosecutions, but in Scotland, they are extremely rare. There might be a couple in the last 20 years because the Lord Advocate is able to block private prosecutions. So this is complete control of the cases by the Scottish government.
Wow, I didn't realize it was as bad as that.
It's as bad as that.
That's stunning. That's just blown my mind. You're not even allowed to do that. Now,
No.
so there's these fatal errors then. In what you're saying there's fatal errors. What are the fatal errors? I mean, is it just purely because of the way it was set up, or is it something that can be fixed, or does it need devolution to be cancelled and restarted from scratch? Or
Well, I mean, the questions it raises, yeah, I mean, I'm doing this work and I'm continually shocked by it. But the problem arose with the Devolution Act, and it was drafted by Scottish law officers. These were probably a Lord Advocate and a Solicitor General. They drafted it, and they made major errors.
did they though? Did they make errors? Did they make errors, or was it deliberate?
Well, what they did was
Half of what? Half a dozen of one and six of the other, isn't it?
well, you wonder. It's difficult to find the information now. What you have to say is, well, yes, it was written by law officers, and these were the law officers at the time. And one of the wheezes they did was, it was as if they said, right, our current job is to be the head of independent prosecutions and to be the independent head of investigating deaths. But under the new setup, we'll make ourselves ministers as well. And that was the fatal error.
That was the fatal error.
Yeah. Government.
Yeah, so at that moment, there was no independent judiciary.
It vanished on the 1st of July, 1999.
Wow, 25 years and no legal system.
Yeah, that's what it is.
Sorry, it's just occurred to me. This is just a question, and I hate to think of what the answer on this one might be. Does that mean that every prosecution for 25 years is null and void?
I've always hesitated to say that, but yes.
There's people in prison that could go, excuse me.
Yeah, because as I say, it's there in the law that governments cannot interfere with judicial processes, and in Scotland they run them. And
wow, there's going to be a lot of people ringing their solicitors this weekend, Monday morning. I want an appeal. I want an appeal.
I mean, the second reason, well, there's two further reasons. One is that devolution was rushed. So although the law officers in Scotland made these fatal errors, also you shouldn't have the head of prosecutions the same as the head of investigation of deaths. They've got to be split. But there are other errors. But the bill that was created in Scotland then went to Westminster, and it really didn't have the level of scrutiny which would be
No.
required for setting up a new parliament.
I think this was Blair's early days, wasn't it? And I think Blair was trying to get out ahead of it and say, look at me, I'm brilliant, I'm fantastic. Look at what I've done. And I think he was trying to rush through a lot of legislation all at once. And I think a lot of that early legislation was flawed. Although tellingly, just as an aside, a tangent, tellingly, the very first law that went through when Blair became Prime Minister was the removal of the death penalty for treason. I think that's very telling. But that's a different video for a different day.
No, I mean, the comments about the prosecutions. I mean, there was some challenge in Westminster, and one of them was the late Lord Clyde, and he feared there's something seriously wrong with this act, with this bill, and it said we should be concerned that we have launched a Titanic, which is doomed. He recognised, and there was some criticism from the then Shadow Secretary of State, Eleanor Lang, who is now the Deputy Speaker. So there were concerns.
So people were aware of it right at the beginning.
They weren't. They thought there's something not quite right here.
Yeah.
But they never. Hansard doesn't show that. What they didn't pick up. I mean, anyone with basic reading.
They felt there was something wrong without any kind of substance to it. They couldn't see what it was. They just felt. Yeah, there was that feel. Yeah.
But I mean, anyone can read the Scotland Act, and you read Section 44, and you read Section 48.
Yeah.
Yeah, and those two are incompatible. They just
trash. They can't. Yeah, mutually incompatible. They trash each other.
Yeah.
You have to pick one. But is it savable, do you think?
I mean, in my work, it was always a case of whatever you identified the problems, you identified the solutions, and that can be done going forward. I mean, it needs major surgery to the Scotland Act because there are quite a few interlinked pieces of legislation in there.
Yeah.
It would need. I mean, we've been saying for several years it needs a new devolution act, one which restores the separation of the powers to Scotland.
Yeah.
Part of the problem is this great legacy of 25 years of what is basically an unlawful justice system and a lawful system of government.
Yeah, that'd have to be figured in somehow, wouldn't it? It'd have to be because you don't want to be releasing criminals.
No, not really.
Genuine criminals who've genuinely committed crimes. But on the other hand, you could argue, even if they're genuine criminals and whatever, they haven't been tried legally. And so you've got a very big dichotomy there.
Yeah, I mean, we're back to the European Convention, but also the Human Rights Act, Article 6, fair trial.
Fair trial,
you can't have a fair trial if the government is the prosecutor.
No, that's gone. That's gone. Do you see any solution, any easy solution, or is it, let's just say, no, so it's going to be a complete new devolution, as you reckon?
It's major surgery on it. It can be done.
Yeah.
Yes, that's fixable. I say it is a concern about the legacy issues because you're thinking, well, if you've got an act like the Scotland Act, which it created a government outside of the law and created a whole avalanche of offences, the act itself was ultra vires. The UK government could not create a government outside the law and with an unlawful justice system.
Yeah.
So what it means, the legal convention is if you've got an act which is ultra vires, it is null and void. It is as if
it doesn't exist. Yeah.
Yeah. The clock goes back to the 30th of June, 1999.
Yeah. Okay, I get that. Now, that email you've sent, and the people who are watching this are probably, I'm going to assume most of them have watched the video that we went through that line by line. And it ends spectacularly, I think, when you're talking about thousands upon thousands of deaths that have literally been disappeared. You know, they've just been lost. Nobody cares. Nobody wants them. Statistics, that's all, not individuals. And I feel that is probably the thing that will get people most angry and may lead to some kind of change.
Yeah.
But it was absolutely stunning. And if that doesn't force the hand, if that doesn't force people who were listed on the contacts for that email, plus all the ones outside, such as the news organisations and things, what would your next step be?
Well, I mean, we've done everything we reasonably can. I mean, with whenever we meet an obstacle, what that means is we escalate it. It's, you know, it's more evidence for the offence, so we keep escalating. But at some point, the authorities have actually got to take over the issues we raise and actually
Yeah.
deal with them. I've got things I can do, but the position is that it is for the government. It's probably going to have to be Westminster.
Even though it's Scottish law. I just want to clarify that, because even though it's Scottish law, Westminster can act above that, can't it?
Yeah, the Scotland Act is it's UK law.
Yeah.
So it's Westminster. So
the UK government could ask the Supreme Court in London to charge Bain, for example.
It's uncharted territory, really, because Scotland doesn't have a lawful prosecution system.
Mm-hmm.
And that comes to light with a case that we've had with Police Scotland since the 1st of March last year, where we had a case of corporate homicide against the Scottish government for its handling of the pandemic. And we
Oh yeah, that's Leslie Roberts, and I'm dealing with that separately. Yeah, but in fact, I'm just I'm doing a YouTube with Leslie. As people who are watching this, I'm doing a YouTube with Leslie on Monday, so that'll be out in the next few days as well. Not YouTube, sorry, a Zoom with Leslie regarding that. So there'll be some updates there. So a little trailer for that one in the middle of this.
Yeah, so we've had the case, and when we submitted the case to the Chief Constable, it was Ian Livingston at the time, it's now Joe Farrell. When we submitted it, we said, because you as a police force act under Scottish government direction, and likewise the prosecutor is the government, the case has to be referred to a lawful police force and to a lawful prosecutor, and they don't exist here.
No. Right. Yeah, because the police are controlled as well. I mean, Joe Farrell was only a job a week, wasn't it? When then, bang, she was owned by the SNP by breaking the law.
Yeah.
And yet, strangely, no prosecution. Yeah. It's all awful. And the more I've looked into it and the more I see about it, the worse it gets. And sometimes I sit back, I finish the video, I put the video back, and I can't believe I've just made that video. I can't believe what I'm reading, what I'm doing.
Yeah,
and it just seems to get worse and worse as time goes on.
I think you're right. I mean, it's you know, I mean, I picked up on the post office because it was simple, but really the massive scandal is these Scotland's disappeared, these thousands of patient safety deaths, the 100 baby deaths a year. It is the 16,000 COVID-19 deaths. They've all vanished into this black hole of the government. You know, it's as if they didn't exist from that point of view.
It's inconvenient for them, isn't it? Political expediency. Make them disappear. We don't have to worry about it. And I think it's cabinet decisions. I'm pretty sure there'll be a little cabal. What are we going to do about this? Sweep it under the carpet. Pretend it doesn't exist. Move on. Nothing to see. And that is not a government. That's a dictatorship.
It is. I mean, one of the problems with the Scotland Act was that, yes, it removed the separation of the powers, but what it meant was that when you got a majority government, you then had an elected dictatorship. And what we saw during the pandemic and the evidence at the COVID-19 inquiry was that even cabinet decisions were not happening. And in effect, it was the First Minister, Nicola Sturgeon, who was acting as Scotland's first elected dictator. She was making decisions on her own.
A cult of personality. Absolutely.
What's good is that the statutory law provides the objective measure of whether something's right or wrong.
Yeah.
And you don't even need to get into the politics. It's
it's just quite clear. It is black and white. It's there. Have you broke the law? Yes. Will you resign? No. Will you fire her? No. Then you must resign. But then he won't resign, and it's going to have to go. I think ultimately it'll have to go to a court. It'll have to go to a prosecution somewhere along the line. But where?
Well, there's no prosecution. I mean, the ministerial code, that is binding. And as you see in both Westminster and also Holyrood, it is expected that they are required to comply with it. The legal side is that both Bain and Yusuf are interfering with the judiciary. That's the main legal
Yeah.
such
And that
offence.
is actually a crime.
It is. I mean, you can
Yeah.
pick it out from things like the Constitutional Reform Act
Yeah.
2005 UK. There is a special piece of Scottish legislation called the Judiciary and Court Scotland Act 2008. And it says the First Minister will not interfere. It says the Lord Advocate will not, no other minister. And things like it sets down who should not be interfering.
And yet, obviously, that's...
Do it all the time.
Yeah, all the time. Yeah. It's just a frightening old world we live in, really, isn't it? When these things happen. And people know it's happening and people are not willing. And I think possibly part of it is that we've had this one government for so long and they are very much not willing to change. And I think it's going to have to take a change of government to try and do the correction of the course. Who knows? There's no obligation for them to do it, but maybe they will. And if that could help sort of separate things.
But the problems are here right now, right? They're right here. Right now. And of course, if it's realised that actually there isn't a lawful prosecution system in Scotland, that has implications.
Massive. Well, we've discussed them.
Immediately.
Immediate ones, yeah.
You know, I mean, you could even engage in sort of crime tourism. Oh, yes, I'll hop across the border from England to Scotland, commit a crime, knowing I can't be extradited. It's that absurd. I mean, we didn't create the problem, but we just commented on it.
But you have to live with it. Yeah. Roger, it's been fascinating. We'll round off there because you only get so much time on a Zoom call unless you pay for it, and I'm not paying for it. Cheap free Zooms are fine. So we are running down and running out on the clock on it. But it's been a pleasure talking to you. We will keep an eye out, and if there's any news, do keep us in the loop and updated, and we'll keep an eye on it because these people must not be allowed to keep getting away with what they're doing.
It cannot continue.
No. And thank you very much for highlighting it.
Thank you very much.
Wish you well. And of course, I'll still be in touch with regards to what Leslie's doing as well. So we'll keep her there. But for today, thank you very much, Roger.
Thank you very much.
Have a good day, and we'll speak soon. Bye.
Bye.
Right. So there we go. Thank you very much for watching this. Thank you very much to Roger. We will keep an eye on this story. There's bound to be more. Do please share the video. Do please let people be aware of it. It's very important that as many people as possible know what's going on. Till next time, stay safe, stay well, stay out of trouble, and goodbye.